Okay, here's the kicker. Get this. Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really? Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you die on stage, you get 72 virgins.
The so-called woke left's assault on free speech has reached a breaking point, and their recent acts indicate that it won't stop anytime soon. With his razor-sharp humor and bold delivery, Dave Chappelle enters.
Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, "What are you smoking?"
Audiences were startled when Chappelle used biting sarcasm to tear through the movement's ridiculousness. This wasn't a lighthearted criticism. Rather, it was an in-depth, accurate, and relentless dissection. The effect was instantaneous and indisputable, like fire searing everything in its path. This was more than just conversation. It was an honest and direct statement.
That's the great irony. Flag burning is free speech, and free speech is one of the key things that makes America great. So now that I have you on my side on that issue, don't be a hypocrite and defend attacks on speech from the left, because you either get the concept or you don't. And sadly, a lot of people don't anymore.
Bill Maher also challenges the same foolishness with his razor-sharp comedy. The left frequently displays the flag of free speech as if it were sacred, yet as soon as someone deviates from the norm, wrath and rage are used to stifle criticism. Within this echo chamber, every remark is examined, and stepping over the invisible line results in labels like threat or bigot. Maher uses witty humor to cut through this hypocrisy and remind us that free speech is independent of political party affiliation. Everyone has this right, even those who would prefer to keep quiet.
Who were never taught it by their derelict educational system, but also Lisa Cook. She's the Fed board member Trump is trying to fire for bullshit reasons, and they are bullshit. But when she tried to get another professor fired because he once, according to one student, was less than rapturous about Martin Luther King Day, no, she should know better. She said free speech should have its limits. Yes, it should, and does. And this comes nowhere close to that.
Lisa Cook's story is all the more interesting because she is a perfect example of a lecturer who confuses preaching with teaching. There are rumors that instead of encouraging real dialogue and critical thinking, she was more concerned with pressing students and coworkers to embrace her personal beliefs. That is indoctrination, not education. Her firing makes sense since no classroom should be used to promote a certain ideology, is drawing a border to preserve academic integrity and shield young minds from ideological indoctrination, not to silence her.
Bad enough that Trump is attacking free speech from the right, throwing the Associated Press out of the press pool, calling reporters enemy of the people, threatening and suing networks simply because he doesn't like the coverage. This country can't become that. But it also can't become what the UK is now, a place where you get arrested for tweets, something that happens 12,000 times a year now in Britain. Last week, the Irish sitcom writer Graham Linehan, who's won an Emmy and 5 BAFTA awards, got off a plane at Heathrow and got arrested by 5 British cops. Not because he was selling drones to the Houthis, just because he's a crank who spends way too much time online ranting about gender ideology.
I must disagree with Maher on one thing, though. Restrictions are occasionally warranted and free speech is not unrestricted. For instance, the Associated Press was dismissed for refusing to acknowledge the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of the United States. That was a purposeful insult to patriotism rather than a straightforward error. Trump's statement makes sense because the 60 Minutes controversy demonstrated blatant prejudice in favor of Harris. You can bet that the broadcast would have been unedited and caused the most harm if the roles had been...
Which is an odd obsession for a comedian from across the pond, because if men weren't allowed to dress as women, British comedy wouldn't exist. There'd be absolutely nothing left of Shakespeare but the sonnets, and Monty Python movies would be 20 seconds long.
Reversed, neither the government nor an enraged mob can take away the freedom to free expression, which is the cornerstone of liberty. We are no longer upholding democracy when we let others determine who is allowed to talk and who has to be silenced. We run the risk of taking it apart bit by bit.
Words of that great Brit, Ricky Gervais, if you don't believe in a person's right to say things that you might find grossly offensive, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. You shouldn't have to eat your words at the airport. The chicken Alfredo on the flight was bad enough.
Just because you don't agree with someone doesn't give you the moral right to silence them. The ability of a society to accept ideas that cause discomfort is the real test of that society's freedom. Canceling someone is a sign of weakness, not wisdom. Outthink them when you disagree. Out-argue them. Outshine them. Divergent opinions, not uniform compliance, are what make free nations prosper. Suppressing opposition sows the seeds of authoritarianism rather than maintaining order. Free speech is essential, not a luxury.
The hand may be crude, but there's plenty of non-crazy people, liberal people, who think the left has gone a little mad with trans issues. Some have expressed that opinion with literary sophistication, like J.K. Rowling. Some by getting big laughs, like Dave Chappelle. And some are downright ugly about it, like Linehan. But ugly is the price of a freedom so great as speech.
Many people today suffer dire repercussions just for disagreeing with elements of the trans movement or the larger gender ideology. Even courteous disagreement is viewed as heresy, and the consequences can be severe. Trump cites celebrities as examples of how speaking outside of the norm has resulted in harassment, intimidation, jail time, job loss, sponsorship withdrawals, and career ruin. That is coercion, not development. Honesty is punished by society under the pretense of tolerance. Furthermore, the repression of public voices should be a major worry for anyone who values liberty.
Try to disappear someone for writing an anti-Israel op-ed in a student newspaper, which I found offensive, but I still would go to the mat for that person to be able to print it. And we can fight Trump on this because we have a First Amendment. England does not. And the fact that they don't, that's not a feature, that's a bug. And it's a bug that's going around Europe now. In Germany, a guy called a politician a Pimmel, which is the German word for dick, and it triggered a police raid. What a Pimmel move.
This narrative serves as a sobering reminder of both how fortunate we are to live in the United States and how important it is to protect the right to free speech. Disobeying authority can cost you your life or your freedom in many places of the world. Ideas can still be questioned, criticized, and contested here. However, this independence is brittle, and the worst dangers frequently originate from inside. When some people assert that they have the authority to restrict speech and determine who is permitted to speak, freedom isn't genuine. That is not liberty, but dominance. People must be free to voice their thoughts without worrying about retribution or indignation. Hold someone accountable if they violate the law, but never silence someone just for speaking. Since free speech is the cornerstone of liberty, it is nearly impossible to reconstruct it once it has collapsed.
From North Yorkshire in Britain faced 2 years in prison for wearing a Halloween costume depicting the terrorist who bombed the Ariana Grande concert. Bad taste? Yeah, bad taste is the whole point of Halloween. This Scottish man was found guilty of hate speech for a YouTube video where he taught his pug to salute when he said Sieg Heil.
Sieg Heil. Sieg Heil.
Elon Musk watched it and said, I don't see it.
Consider Elon Musk's recent homage, which ignited mainstream media and social media. Headlines screamed, commentators chastised him, and feeds exploded with indignation. The main distinction between America and most of the rest of the world, however, is that there were no police at his house, no arrests, and no incarceration. He encountered opposition and criticism, which is to be expected of any public figure in a democracy. That is the intended function of free speech. Others are free to disagree with you, but it doesn't mean that what you say is unlawful. You have the freedom to act or speak as you see fit. Musk's action serves as a blatant reminder that America must uphold the right to free expression, even in cases where it offends or disturbs us.
Musk, Kanye, this fucking dog, they're all wrong, and they all have the right to be wrong. Britain is now considering the so-called pub law. Okay, it's not just about pubs. It's a workplace bill aimed at preventing any kind of harassment in the workplace, including verbal remarks overheard. Okay, problem is a pub is a workplace, so is a bookstore. Would a major chain like Waterstones risk hosting a book signing by a controversial author like J.K. Rowling? And pubs? People go to pubs for two reasons: to drink and to exercise their inalienable right to talk.
Restricting free speech and caving into the woke left, in my opinion, might seriously endanger Britain. Few people appear to understand the true risks of this type of repression, and the situation there has already gotten worse far more quickly than many anticipated. There will be dire repercussions when it eventually hits a tipping point. The terrifying truth is that it's not just on social media anymore. You could be reported, questioned, or even called in for questioning if you make even one offensive remark at work. Workplaces are now breeding areas for monitoring. This is slow motion despotism, not democracy. What's the worst part? These speech limitations serve solely to placate a small, indignant group. They do not safeguard society. If Britain does nothing, the very liberties that previously characterized the nation will be undermined in addition to being silenced.
In the House of Lords, they're in a bar called the Drunken Rock. Any Brit will tell you the food is awful, the weather sucks, but at least you can call each other a cunt. And now that's gone? It's like making a rule at the dog park: no sniffing.
No government or cultural gatekeeper has the right to restrict free expression. It is an essential human right. No matter how strong or boisterous a group gets, they are powerless to control who can speak or what can be said. The instant one side takes possession of the microphone and mutes everyone else, liberty disappears. A society is no longer free when it only allows pre-approved discourse. Instead, it is regulated. History demonstrates that all other liberties swiftly follow the loss of free speech. It is essential to have the freedom to ask questions, debate ideas, express oneself, and even offend. It is the foundation of democracy. Without it, we are subjects rather than citizens, and that freedom needs to be forcefully defended.
Here's the kicker. Get this. Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really? Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you die on stage, you get 72 virgins. Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, "What are you smoking?"
Even nations that were formerly notorious for stifling dissent are starting to understand the value of free speech, or at the very least, loosening their severe limitations. Consider Saudi Arabia. In the past, criticizing those in positions of authority may result in jail time or worse. To suppress public expression, the authorities used intimidation and silence. But today, there are indications of change. Some of America's most controversial comedians who question authority, defy social conventions, and satirically highlight the paradoxes in society are receiving invitations to perform in the country that was once infamous for stifling dissenting opinions. It's a big change. Although Saudi Arabia still has a long way to go before it can truly claim freedom, the country's acceptance of artists who thrive on dissent is a testament to the principle's reach. Western democracies don't need to go back to censorship, especially because transparency is being progressively embraced by even conservative regimes. Free expression is the cornerstone of liberty, not a privilege enjoyed by a select few. Freedom crumbles when elites, governments, or crowds control who is allowed to speak. If we don't stand up for disagreement here, it's like we're giving up, while countries who used to oppose free speech are starting to appreciate it. That brings an end to the video for today. Please like and subscribe if this conversation was enjoyable. I appreciate you viewing, and I hope to see you soon.